Hi team, today I want to review naming fractions. We know that when we name fractions, we're working with two parts of a number. We are working with the numerator, which is the number on top, or first if you're looking at a model like this, or if you're looking at it written like that. And then the bottom number is called the denominator. We know that when we name our numerator, we're talking about the parts of our fraction. So numerator is the parts that we're focusing on, the parts that we're naming, how many parts we have. And then the denominator tells us the whole, and really it tells us the parts in the whole, parts in the whole, parts in the whole. So when we look at a fraction, we have two things to think about. Usually we think about the denominator first. We think, how many parts is our whole broken into? Because that is our denominator and that is our fraction or fractional part, our unit fraction. So if I'm looking at this whole square, I know that is my whole. This is one whole blue square. One whole blue square. Now, I'm going to cut this into equal parts, and I want you to think about what the denominator, or how many parts there are in my whole. So as I cut, I want you to be thinking, okay, she has created blank equal parts. My denominator is blank. Right now I've got two equal parts. These are both 1/2. We have halves because there are two parts of a whole. We know that two parts of a whole makes halves, and our denominator would be 2. Now, I'm going to actually stop there, and we'll keep the 2. If I want you to focus on each piece, we can name each piece. We know that one piece, or part, would be labeled as 1 because we're only looking at one of them. That's our numerator. If I want to name this one piece, I know it's only 1 out of however many parts were in my whole. In this whole, there are 2 parts in the whole. So this one single part is 1 out of 2 parts. That'll be the same for this part because this part is also only 1 part out of 2 equal parts. If we look at that in a model that we draw, it would look the same. We could split it into 2 equal parts, try to make them more equal, Mrs. Burke. And then if we go ahead and shade one, or not, we can name each piece 1/2 because we know that this is 1 part out of 2 equal parts. And remember, we always knew our denominator by naming our fraction that way, blank out of blank. This part is 1 out of 2 in the whole. The shaded part is also 1 out of 2 in the whole. Let's look at another. We know that fractions aren't always squares. Fractions can be any shape, as long as it creates equal parts. We're going to look at our circle. Now, I could make thirds equally and sixths equally, but that's really hard when you're looking at a circle. It's easier to go with like 2's numbers because then you can just cut in half and in half again. So I'm going to go with 4. And you can notice that right now I've created halves just like my square. But I'm actually going to keep going, so my denominator will not be 2 in this case. And as you can see, you should be thinking, how many equal parts did Mrs. Burke create? 4. There are 4 equal parts. So you should be thinking of your denominator right now. I know my bottom number, or my denominator, is 4 because there are 4 parts in the whole. So I can label each part 1 out of 4 because each of these parts is only 1 part, but our denominator is 4 because there are 4 equal parts in the whole. Each of these parts is 1 part out of 4 equal parts. If I were to draw a model, it would look just the same. We can make 4 equal parts, and each of those parts is going to be named 1/4. Now I have a challenge for you. If I shade all of these other parts, and then I ask you to name the shaded fraction, what do you need to focus on? Shaded. I said shaded, you need to name shaded. How many shadeds are there? There's 3. Out of how many parts in the whole? 4. So the shaded fraction is 3/4. What's the unshaded fraction? The unshaded fraction is the part that's not shaded. There's only 1 out of 4 that are not shaded. So we have an unshaded 1 and a shaded 3. But our denominator stays the same because the denominator tells how many parts are in the whole. And no matter how many parts we shade or don't shade, there will always be 4 parts in this whole. All right, do your best.